Thank you. Tommy Sheppard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So it seems we are not to leave the European Union on the 29th of March after all. Let me begin by offering my commiserations to the honourable member from Rayleigh and Wickford and his associates in the European Research Group. I appreciate this must be a difficult time. I fear that commemorative memorabilia may need to be scrapped, the champagne orders may need to be cancelled. Indeed, the bunting will have to be put back in the attic as Freedom Day celebrations are cancelled throughout the land. But it seems to me, Mr. Speaker, that the inconvenience and disappointment of the hard right faction in this Parliament is a small price to pay in order to see if we can save the country from catastrophe. Now, Mr. Speaker, the gravity of this situation means that it is not a moment for schadenfreude, so I shall refrain from seeking any pleasure in the disappointment of others. But I do think that we need to point out in this debate that the fact that we are discussing this statutory instrument here tonight can only be seen as nothing other than the abject humiliation of the British government in this process. Not only because, on more than 100 occasions, they have foolishly come to that dispatch box and reassured us that we would be leaving the European Union on the 29th of March, but also because, that having proven impossible, they now come and offer us a timetable that is not of their design, but one that is imposed upon them. If that isn't humiliation, I don't know what is. But, Mr. Speaker, as so many have said in recent debates on this matter, they have only themselves to blame. The fact that this is here before us tonight seeking an extension to the process is entirely a consequence of the way in which the process has been conducted by this government. From the word go, they were not interested in anyone's opinion but their own. The dialogue about how to implement the 2016 referendum result was constrained only to the voices within the minority Conservative government and their allies in the DUP, who I see are absent from our proceedings tonight. And that, Mr. Speaker, is shocking. It is shocking because what they should have done was to try and reach some sort of national consensus on how to proceed in this most divided of countries. But that is what they did, and of course in the middle of it they called a general election, and the Prime Minister asked the British people for a mandate to support the manner in which she was discharging the referendum result. And the British people refused to give it to her. Now, you would have thought that at that point that would be the time to change tack, take stock and perhaps readjust. But no, they simply circled the wagons closer, bunkered down and spent the last 2 years negotiating with the European Union without reference to or a mandate from this Parliament. That is why we are in the situation that we are today. Now, I think what happens next, Mr. Speaker, is the real question. If we have the delay granted that the statutory instrument suggests, what are we going to do with the time that is afforded to us? And to my mind, that entirely depends on whether the government wishes to go forward with this Parliament in good faith or in bad faith. A bad faith way of going forward would be to regard the debates that we have had today and that we may well have in the future, to regard them as some sort of inconvenient sideshow, an irritation to be dispensed with before they come back yet again with a failed agreement, unaltered, to put before this House. That would be bad faith, and I think we saw some of it earlier on today, when the government actually tried to prevent us having the debates that we had this afternoon in the first place. And it wasn't a good look, Mr. Speaker. And actually, it is interesting that the Parliament rejected the government's position today by an even bigger majority than we did on Monday. And I would caution the government to have some humility now in the way in which it proceeds. A good faith way of proceeding would be to try and reach out and agree a new political consensus with other voices in this Parliament and in this country. In particular, other political parties and the devolved administrations within the United Kingdom. That would be good faith. Now, it's a little surreal, Mr. Speaker, because we are discussing what to do with the timetable before we actually know the outcome of the votes that we have had earlier on. So I don't know yet what the mood of the Parliament is and the various options we put before it. But I am concerned that when the government has talked about how it will respond to those decisions and those debates, it has suggested that it couldn't possibly contemplate supporting anything which it regarded as undeliverable. Now, I think we can all accept, Mr. Speaker, that everything has practical consequences, and we have to come up with proposals that are practical and that can be implemented. But I rather fear that the use of the word undeliverable in this context is simply meant to mean anything which conflicts with the draft withdrawal agreement they have with the European Union. And if that is the case, then that is another conceit to try and deny the will of this Parliament, because the whole purpose of this exercise is that, having voted down the draft withdrawal agreement by such large majorities, we are genuinely engaged in a process to see if there is a route to a majority by some other means. And it stands. I will happily give way.